Po Leung has mirrored the development of Hong Kong. Since its establishment, it has evolved over time in line with the changing needs of the society. Getting to know Po Leung is like reviewing the history of Hong Kong and understanding its past. In the late 19th century, both Chinese and Westerners resided in Hong Kong, but the vast majority of the Chinese were living in poverty. Kidnapping, trafficking of children, and women as prostitutes happened time and again. In order to curb human trafficking, a group of eminent gentry and merchants presented a petition to Sir John Pope Hennessy, the then governor, on the 8th of November 1878, volunteering to donate funds as rewards for the investigation and arrest of kidnappers and traffickers. The group sought permission to establish Po Leung Kuk, and the proposal was approved by the governor in 1880. In August 1882, the Po Leung Kuk regulations were gazetted after obtaining the approval of the Ministry of Colonial Affairs in Britain. The objective of the cook was to care for the young and protect the innocent. Furthermore, the cook adopted the philosophy of Quan Ti that says loyalty, justice, benevolence and courage in serving the society. It primarily sought to prevent and suppress the abduction of destitute women and children. During the early years, the cook used the upper floor of the Ping On Block and Fuk Sao Block at Po Yan Street as its temporary office and shelter for women and children. At that time, the Hong Kong government authorized Po Leung Kuk to investigate all kidnap cases, and the first case investigated by the cook took place in May 1880. The government issued special identity badges to the directors of the cook, empowering them to search and interrogate suspected kidnappers. In some of the cases handled by the cook, women and children were rescued. Some of the victims had been sold. Some had been seduced to become prostitutes. Some had been abused and left their family, and others were saved from suicide. On completion of the investigation, the cook would arrange to return the victims to their families or their hometown, where they were handed over to the local charity organizations. Orphans were arranged for adoption. For the rest of the female victims, the cook would arrange marriage for them subject to their consent. As the space at Ping On Block and Fuk Sao Block was soon found to be insufficient for the use of the cook, the government provided the cook with funds for the construction of new premises at Kwang Fuk Lot. In 1896, the first cook-owned premises were built at Po Yan Street, and the opening ceremony of the new office was officiated by Sir William Robinson, the then governor. With growing demand for its services after moving into its new offices, the cook's expenses increased rapidly. Apart from donations from the directors, the cook also received donations from various industries, organizations, temples, religious services, and restaurants to maintain its operation. In 1897, Po Leung Kuk started employing teachers to provide education to the women and children under its care. Later, the residents were also trained to knit and weave, which would help them earn a living after leaving the cook. Po Leung Kuk helped people in need, regardless of their nationality or where they came from. It had provided shelter and subsequently arranged for the return of more than 40 Japanese women who had either eloped or had been kidnapped to Hong Kong. In 1898, the Japanese government presented a silver plate and a certificate to Po Leung Kuk as a gesture of appreciation. Because of the success, regions in Southeast Asia, including Singapore, Sandakan, and Siam, set up similar organizations modeling on the cook's operation. In 1911, the Chinese Revolution broke out with the falling of the Qing dynasty. Many people flooded to Hong Kong as refugees. Hundreds of women and children were admitted to Po Leung Kuk. With the increase in the number of residents, the space at Po Leung Street was soon found to be insufficient, and the plan for a new site emerged. In 1930, the government granted lot number 3158 on Leighton Road to the Cook as its permanent headquarters. On the 4th of March 1932, Sir William Peel, the then governor, officiated at the opening ceremony of the Leighton Road headquarters. After moving into its new headquarters, the government gave an annual grant of $7,000 to the Cook. The Cook also received donations from other charitable funds, including the Chinese Temple Fund. The outbreak of the Sino-Japanese War led to another influx of refugees from China to Hong Kong. Meanwhile, the government issued an edict forbidding the keeping of mujai, or maids. This resulted in more women and children being admitted to Po Leung Cook. They stayed in the Cook before they were sent to their organizations such as the Kings Park Refugee Camp, Salvation Army, orphanages, and nurseries, and so on. During the period of Japanese occupation, the Japanese authorities did provide support to the Cook. However, people in Hong Kong suffered a great deal. In 1945, the price of rice increased from $10 something per jin to $160 to $170 per jin. Seeing many people suffered from starvation, the directors of the Cook distributed provisions from June to October from the front door of the Cook. Each person could get a ration of congee, and more than 500 people were helped each day during that period. As necessitated by the situation, the Cook began to expand its service scope to provide vocational training and education rather than just offering relief. On the 30th of August 1945, Hong Kong was liberated. Although the number of kidnap cases dropped, the problem of abused and abandoned women and children still persisted. In 1946, the Cook set up its first kindergarten and primary school. Our residential children had the opportunity to receive education. At that time, the Cook received a monthly grant of $600 from the then Education Department. Arranged marriages were not regulated until the 1950s. The Cook set up an investigation team with the directors responsible for investigating the background of these suitors to ensure that they were indeed reliable. As the society evolved, arranged marriages were eventually abolished in the 1970s. The emblem of the Po Leung Cook was designed and adopted in 1951. At that time, the Cook services were further expanded, giving more emphasis on vocational training. The Cook also started to provide services outside its headquarters. In 1953, the first free evening school was founded for students who could not afford to pay school fees. In 1961, the Cook launched its child sponsorship scheme. In 1964, the first nursery was set up. In 1966, the first primary school outside the Cook's headquarters was founded. The Cook's first secondary school opened in 1971. To meet the rapid social changes, the government amended the Ordinance of Po Leung Cook in 1973. The Po Leung Cook Incorporation Ordinance was enacted under Chapter 1040 of the Laws of Hong Kong. It replaced the old ordinance and further extended the scope of the Cook services. Today, Po Leung Cook has developed into one of the most well-established charitable and social welfare organizations in Hong Kong. The Cook now provides a wide range of education, social, recreational, and cultural services to the community. From the evening schools of the early 1950s, the education services of today has now grown tremendously and diversified. Today, it operates a range of educational institutions, kindergartens, direct subsidy primary and secondary schools, quality private schools, government subsidized primary and secondary schools, sixth form colleges, education services centres, evening schools and special schools with boarding facilities. The Hong Kong New Space Po Leung Cook Community College, a joint venture of the Cook and Hong Kong New Space, was set up in 2006, offering various practical and high-quality associate degree and higher diploma courses which meet today's needs. The Cook offers a range of community services, including integrated family services, childcare services, rehabilitation services, elderly services, and children and youth services. The Po Leung Cook Charity Fund for the Disadvantaged, which was established in 2005, aims to provide temporary financial assistance to the needy individuals and families in Hong Kong. The Pak Tam Chung Holiday Camp and Tai Tong Holiday Camp were opened in 1979 and 1994 respectively. They offered a wide range of recreational and leisure programs to campers from all walks of life. Po Leung Cook has grown in tandem with society. The historical documents and relics of the Cook had been preserved and conserved systematically since the 1980s. The Cook established its archives in 1984 and expanded in 1996. The Po Leung Cook Archives had been opened to the public in 1998 and renamed as Po Leung Cook Museum in 2002. The museum actively preserves and conserves a wide range of historical collections passed down since its establishment in 1878. Visitors can view the exhibits, conduct research, and join the guided tours and seminars organized by the museum. The Cook has been active in launching various sponsorship programs, including Child Sponsorship Program, Care for the Elders Fundraising Project, and Rehabilitation Services Sponsorship Program. These programs would not only help raise funds to improve the respective services, but also promote these services to the public. Every year, different fundraising events are organized to raise funds so as to enhance the Cook's services for the needy. Starting from the objective of suppressing the abduction of destitute women and children, Po Leung Cook now provides a diversity of services to the community. With its development closely linked to changes in Hong Kong society, Po Leung Cook has unstintingly served the community of Hong Kong by safeguarding the young and protecting the innocent, and will continue to serve society in this essential and caring capacity.